Cultural identity and diaspora. Stuart Henry Macphail Hall was a Jamaican born British Marxist sociologist and cultural theorist and political activist. Along with Richard Hogarth and Raymond Williams, he became the founding figures of British cultural studies. Researchers mainly deal with cultural studies, which is based on race and gender. So, according to Hall, identity is a production which is never complete, always in process, and always constituted within, not outside representation. He talks about positioning. The subject of cultural identity is always positioned in a particular time, place, culture, and history. He takes example from his own life. His positioning throughout his life was a shadow of black diaspora. He also talks about the emerging third cinemas. These cinemas gives a visual representation of Afro-Caribbean and Asian black people who are the new post-colonial subjects. There are two different ways of thinking. The first positioning explains how identity is a collective history and there are common historical experiences and cultural codes. The oneness and Caribbeanness must be researched and brought out to light. This understanding of oneness plays an important role in the negritude movement and other movements for the marginalized, such as feminism, anti-colonialism, anti-racism. Their cause may be different, but they are grouped into one true identity. Imaginative rediscovery. Under this topic, creative artists explain that underlying unity of black people whom colonization and slavery distributed across the African diaspora. It is an imaginary reunification, that is, the photographs of these artists and photographers becomes the resources of resistance and identity. It reconstructs the visuals which are portrayed by the West. The second positioning is a matter of becoming and being. This identity belongs to the future as much as to the past. It is not only a mere discovery, that is, recovery of the past, but also the positioning of the individuals in the future. In this second positioning, one can understand the trauma behind the colonial experience. Hall says that the colonizers had the power to make us see and experience ourselves as the other. Cultural identity gives a positioning. It is constructed through the earlier memory, fantasy, narrative, and myth. According to Hall, this second view is very much unsettling. And there are two vectors that he describes here. The vector of similarity and continuity, which is related to the past heritage, and the vector of difference and rupture, which is a result of slavery, migration, and transportation. So the West pushed the blacks to the periphery, but this act of the West unified the blacks despite their differences. Next, Hall describes about three presences. First is presence African. It is the site of the repressed, that is silenced by slavery. Africa remains the unspeakable presence in the everyday life and customs of the slave quarters. It is present in the beliefs, arts, crafts, and music tales told to the children. This Africa hides behind every narration in the Caribbean cultural life. There is a spiritual journey towards a new Africa which is grounded in the old Africa. So the original Africa has been transformed. One cannot literally go back to that same home. Instead, one can belong to the imagined Caribbean identity. Hall describes that one can return to the new Africa which is retold through politics, memory, and desire. Next comes the European presence. The Europeans belong to the play of the power. They give a positioning to the sons of the soil. The colonized are represented through the colonial discourse, literatures of adventures and exploration, romance of the exotic, and Hollywood and pornographic languages. So they impose the otherness through their narratives of the colonial identity. Next comes the American presence. It is called the New World Presence, which is a juncture point where many cultural tributaries meet. Many cultures meet together because the land has been emptied by the colonizers. Those who have occupied are not its original natives. This contact zone offers hybridity and the aspect of becoming. So, Stuart Hall reassures saying that identity is dynamic and is not constant. It always undergoes a constant transformation. So, national culture is not a folklore, but instead it is the body of efforts which people create and maintain it throughout.